Bids are in. The gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast on all things wine value. With you as always, I am Jeff McGurn. I work here on our marketing team. And of course, with me is Paul Walker, our wine auction and wine expert. Interestingly, we're going to get right into this is our auction recap episode. We're going to get right into this auction recap. We're going to start off with stuff that saw a lot of action. There was a lot going on this week. We had a lot of stuff in auction. We had a lot of bids. And right at the top, of course, is a 1988 Gugal Côte du Rhône, which is funny because I love the Gugal Côte du Rhône, just sort of their baseline. This one, we had 6 of them in auction. There were 13 bids, started off at 35 and they went at 86. I can only hope that my Gugal Côte du Rhônes will go for $86. Granted, they're not 35 years old, but you never know. You never know.
That's a surprise to me because Gugal, they make a ton of this stuff. It's not rare.
It's not rare.
It wasn't rare when it was released. I'm sure there's still some of it lying around, but it's like a phenomenal Rhone vintage. And so I guess for something with that much time on it in great shape, that's probably just, sat there since release. It hasn't moved anywhere because the bottles look great. Everything, there were 6 of them and they all looked really, really good. So I think it's just collectible and something, to try something from that era. I suspect too, the people that know this wine know that maybe it was a higher caliber of Côte du Rhône back in the day, if you will, like maybe from more select sources or, smaller amounts of vineyards, you know what I mean? So more of a terroir driven wine than say the current, release. But I don't know.
Let's be honest. Everything that came out of the 80s was a higher caliber. Everything. We have the 2018 Henri Gouge, Nuit Saint-Georges. Gouge.
All of these pronunciations.
What today. I said.
Very, very careful.
Agree to disagree. Claude de Porret Saint-Georges.
Claude de Porret Saint-Georges.
Right. That's what I said. And we had 2 of them, 43 trackers, 13 bids, started at 60, hammered at 110. I mean,
I was surprised, because we've been talking about Gouge now for weeks. Like there were older releases or I should say older vintages in that we were kind of, we're like, oh, that's a decent deal. And they didn't get bid up very much. They weren't very expensive. I think they were all sort of in the 50 to like 75 range. And some of them had some time on them too. So I suspect again here that the amount of wine that was available was very limited. And so there's probably not a lot of this available in the US. And so I think 43 trackers, that's very popular.
I mean, you're right. We've been talking about Gouge for a while. And I think the other thing was I felt like last week there wasn't as much Burgundy coming into auction. And that may have also had an impact on things that there's a lot of stuff. There just wasn't as much. And there were a lot of Burgundies. I think a lot of stuff that did come in the Burgundy category was at lower price points, which may have lent itself to a little bit more competition because there's going to be more people interested in bidding on it. We had 3 bottles of the 06 Pierre Grimont Sauvigny Le Bon. That's what I said. And this one, 36 trackers, 12 bids, started at 35, hammered at 91.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, for Sauvigny Le Bon, I think this is a question of rarity more than anything else. That's my guess.
And then sticking in Burgundy, 07 Bruno Collin, Chassagne Montrachet. This one, 31 trackers, 11.
I don't know. It's $35 to start. Who priced that? That's way too low. I mean, 50 would have been more acceptable in my opinion.
Just goes to show you, that there's some good deals to be had on WineBid. 76 Pierre-Eve Masson Chateau de Bligny, Von Romani. This one, 23 trackers, 10 bids, started at 40, went up to 121.
Yeah, another incredibly underpriced wine, but the market took care of it, right? The market buyers are going to see it. It's not going to sneak by. You're not going to get a steal on a 76 Von Romani from Chateau de Bligny. This is, again, I'm sure quite a rare specimen. I don't think we've ever sold it before, and I'm not likely to see it again anytime soon.
You're going to see much of that. 1990 Canalicchio di Sopra Brunello di Montalcino, 18 trackers, 9 bids, took it from 40 to 57, where it hammered. This one, I mean, even at 57, I still feel like Brunello is still not a bad price for Brunello with that much age. I mean, you're looking at 33 years of age, and it makes me shudder to think that somebody born in 1990 is 33 years old now. Because that was the year I was born, obviously. A non-vintage Alexander Phelan Brut Cuvée DMY, which is like DIY, but with an M. Do it myself, yourself. And then that one, 22, we had two of them, 22 trackers, 8 bids, 65, took it all the way up to 110. They hammered at 110.
Yeah, this is a rare bird. Do not see, I'm looking actually at the back label just for fun to see who brings this in. And again, I'm sure this is something that's extremely rare in the US, if not elsewhere, and therefore, quite sought after. And also, I was trying to see if there was like a disgorgement date or something, but it looks like it might have been brought in quite a while back. So that's a pretty rare example. And I don't know this producer either. So
we had a 1966 Louis Martini, California Mountain Special Selection Pinot Noir.
Yeah, that went nuts.
Yeah, 40 is what it started at. 8 bids, took it all the way to 155. Whoa. Yeah. That was quite a trajectory.
I mean, it's 60s California wine, which, depending on what it is, for the most part, I mean, still for, I think 155, it's not for something that's, very classic California, probably still drinking pretty well. These old martini wines really hold up really well.
I'll tell you, I have a bunch of Pinots from California, from Napa, from the 60s. And a lot of them are actually still drinking really, really well, even today. Like, it's almost shocking that they've been able to hold up over time. We had we've got a 2008 Mio Camusé Nuit Saint-Georges au Bordeaux. That one, 18 trackers, 8 bids. We had 3, started at 105, hammered at 220.
Yeah, I think that one kind of hadn't been in, I think, for a long time. So it's probably an old reserve and got bid up, because I was surprised too that we might have even mentioned this actually as something that was a value last week. I don't remember, but that didn't surprise me that it got bid up to that price. The Meo Camusé wines are not inexpensive and very sought after, especially Domaine, the estate wines. So
one that we did talk about was a 1996 Viete Barolo Valero Reserva. This one, 30 trackers, 8 bids, took it from 270, where it hammered at $780.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a rare wine. The Reserva Valero from Viete is not. I mean, the last time it was an auction was in 15, and then prior to that was 2011. And then there are scattered examples, 11, 10, 9, 7. Anyway, it's very rare these days, and the winery changed hands, the winemaker's leaving or left. I can't remember all the details, but it's actually owned by an American family or company now. But interestingly, that was a lot of activity. I did not expect to see that much.
An 05 Alex Gambal Von Romani, Ville-Vigne, that's what I said. 21 trackers, 7 bids, took it from $45 to where it hammered at 96, just under $100.
Yeah, it's an American guy, Alex Gambal, produces wine in Burgundy, and they, again, pretty rare. Don't see him that often. You don't see him on restaurant lists. It's mostly, I think, a lot of them are still in Europe floating around, or on the East Coast, maybe. I don't know. Don't get out much, but that's an interesting wine. I think this kind of snuck past us, or it was added later in the week is what I suspect, because I did not see this at the beginning of the week. So
I think it was added later in the week too. There was an 82 Argyros Santorini.
Oh yeah, this Vinsanto. Yeah, we were talking about this.
We were talking about this Vinsanto. 7 bids, 30 to 56.
You're an influencer now. I mean, you're hyping these Greek wines.
And then the next one, 2013 Diamond Creek Red Rock.
Yeah.
We talked about this one as well.
Surprising.
Were it not for me mentioning it, I don't think it would have gotten any bids.
Yeah, I'm sure all those Diamond Creek fans out there.
Well, it was like 100. What was it? It started at 155. Right.
Yeah,
we said that they're like, you can't find Creek for under $200 these days.
Yeah. Well, not under 300, in fact.
Well, now, and 2013 was a great year in Napa. So I I mean,
Well,
that
yeah, and I
one,
think like this winery's particular ascendance to this kind of rarefied pricing hasn't, well, I guess it's taken longer than I would have suspected. I mean, the lake was always really, really expensive, but then scattered vintages of the 90s, even some of the 80s and various 90s vintages, and obviously then, through the 2000s were never that much. Because you look at the history just a couple of years ago, like there's a bunch of it was sold in 2020 and it just hammered at 160 consistently, like throughout the year. And that's when, things were taking off and after COVID was going wild, and it didn't push prices up, right? Like it didn't become more sought after, even though people were buying it like crazy until this most recent. I mean, 165 was the last hammer in September of 22. So that to me is wild. I would have not predicted that.
It's the Finally Hammered podcast effect here, right? Winemakers beware. All that it takes is a mention from Paul and Jeff. And
there you go. Yeah. Then there's this. Sorry, go ahead.
Were you going to say the 85 Vue Telegraph?
Well, yeah, that's not too surprising. That's a pretty amazing wine. And again, I suspect this has not been in for quite a while. No, it's been quite a while since that was in. Bottle looks fantastic too. It was in great shape.
7 bids took it from 110 to 250. Then we had 3 bottles of the 2010 Jean-Louis Chave Saint-Joseph.
We did mention this.
We did mention this.
I wanted to talk about this a little bit because there's, we'll get into it later, but I was surprised that not all of the Chave wines that were in last week actually sold. And I think a couple of them were, actually around the same price to start. And this one, like you said, it started at 90 and sold at 210. But the other wines were also around the same price, but then didn't sell. I was a little confused about that.
Yeah, that one, I was $90 and then hammers at 210. That just seemed to be, quite a trajectory. We had a 96 JJ Prum, Jojas Prum, Greche Himmelreich Riesling Auslese, numero 14, 22 trackers, 7 bids. Started at 65, hammered at 121. I'm actually not surprised. I mean, you're looking at an Auslese with, 27 years of age. It's probably sitting right now, $121 actually still seems like a pretty decent deal to me. And JJ Prum is a fantastic producer of they make phenomenal stuff. One that I thought was kind of interesting, 2011 Philippine de Saint-Cyril Châteauneuf-du-Pape Grand Reserva. I actually have a bunch of Philippine Saint-Cyril 2011 Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Started at 15, hammered at 23. So that got a bunch of action for something that was a very reasonable price point. That's right, folks. We got a lot of reasonably priced stuff here.
Well, the other one that does make sense about this is that it actually started at a higher price and then rolled over a couple of weeks. And then suddenly became popular again. So go figure.
I'll cut it off there because we could go on forever and ever and ever. Let's talk about some of the standouts for you in terms of this last.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to mention just a couple things. We always talk about some of the heavy hitters, like, different designations of Rhone Conti, for example. And there was a bottle of Corton Charlemagne that went in a couple weeks ago and then hammered last night at 83, 85. So it looks like, it was like, oh boy, that's pretty high, but it's not as though the price, I don't think, is really going to change. The last hammer just not too long ago in December was 83, 85. So as you can see, it's kind of holding where it was. And that's obviously, I believe, the first vintage of Corton Charlemagne, at least publicly released from this winery. And so it's quite rare and sought after. There was a case of 09 Lafleur Petrus hammered at 3,600.
Yeah.
You can see, we don't always see full case lots like that necessarily move very readily. So that was interesting. These, or at least one of those 19 Bizo Von Romane Les Jachets hammered at 3,370, which is quite an eye-watering price. But that's Bizo, not too shocking there. And a couple other examples from the 1990 Beaumont's hammered at 2645. That actually seemed a little bit low to me, comparatively, because we've seen other more recent examples go for more. So that was kind of interesting because there's such a banner vintage. But in fact, the 1994 Clos Vougeot hammered at 2560, or excuse me, 2660, which was slightly more than the 90 Bon. Now, obviously, it's Grand Cru, but 94 not as sought after as 1990. And there was a couple bottles of three mags of 2020 Kongsgaard Judge Chardonnay, and I think they sold for 900 or 810 a piece. Anyway, that was pretty wild. So a couple fun things there to see. And I think that was about it. 2020. There were some 2020 Munire wines in last week. I think there was a lot of attention on those.
Yeah.
Colombier, let's see, one sold at 365. And I think there were a few others as well. And some Charles Michel wines continue to move as well. So
they're also a 1996 Diamond Creek Lake Vineyard 9-liter OWC.
Did that thing sell? Oh, okay.
I love how you're playing coy. Can't wait for my birthday.
What did it sell for?
2,200. 3 bids took it from 1,600 to 2,200. I mean, a 9-liter.
That's funny.
Here's the
thing.
Again,
this wine was in the auction since for months, and then of course it gets bid up, repeatedly. So.
Well, here's a little pro tip here, a little life hack. Corkage at a lot of places is getting up to $50. So if you were to bring in 12 bottles of Diamond Creek, you'd pay $600. You bring in one 9-liter and you'll save $550 in corkage fees. And as long as you could convince them that, one bottle and it doesn't stink, which I don't think you're going to get away from, but yeah, that's cool that it got bid up, because I thought it was a little bit, it was kind of getting ignored after a while, but nope, it just took one person to bid on it for it to get bid up, another few $100. So, I mean, honestly, I don't even necessarily think that price is all that crazy for a 9-liter. I mean, you're looking at $183 a bottle for 96 Diamond Creek Lake Vineyard, which is a tremendous price. I mean, look at what the other 96 went for, right? I mean, that one was over $300, right? This is 183. And the other great part is that 9-liter probably has aged fantastically, right? A 9-liter is probably going to be singing right now, whereas you might be, more concerned about it being over the hill in a smaller bottle. Anyway,
it's cool too, because I actually know that this bottle was sold in the Napa Valley auction a few years ago. I think it was actually a bunch of years ago. And so, it's one of those kind of special lots that was, purchased way back when by the consignor and hasn't moved anywhere. And there were a lot of really, really neat bottles from this collection. So that I thought was excellent. That, was an interesting example, not just, some random bottle that came out of nowhere, but that's a fantastic wine. You're right. In the end, it's not overpriced.
No, not at all. Well, folks, that's a wrap on our auction recap. Please join us for our next episode. We're going to be going through all of the wines that are coming into auction. And we will see you later, folks. This has been Finally Hammered with Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker. Cheers.
Cheers.